What's up, everybody? I hope you are doing well today. We have a very special interview with my friend Steven, who reached out on the Hair System Reddit. Today we talk about a whole range of subjects, and I have them timestamped down below for you if you do want to hear different parts of the conversation. But it ranges from, hundreds of pounds of weight loss to how spirituality kind of ties in with hair systems, as strange as that sounds, into Steven's experience and use with hair systems, the before and after, all of these interesting elements. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and please give a round of applause and a big thank you to Steven down in the comments below. But let's just jump into it. Well, hello, Steven. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh man, I'm so good, and I'm just extremely blessed to be here with you today, because word on the street is that one, you're going to be sharing a little bit about your hair loss, hair system story, but so much more, how it's affecting you in your life and beyond.
Yep, that's the goal.
Cool.
That's the goal.
Cool. Good stuff. So why don't you give us a brief kind of summation of, how hair loss started for you?
All right. So basically, when I was about 16, started waking up in the morning, would find my pillow covered with hair. Taking a shower, the drain would get clogged up. Both my parents had very thin hair, so I kind of figured that I was doomed from the get-go. I figured, it was going to happen, but I didn't figure it would happen that soon. By the time I was, graduating from high school, you could basically see my scalp. It hadn't receded a whole lot, but it was like really, really thin. But then by the time I was like 23, 24, I looked like an old man. I mean, I kept cutting my hair shorter and shorter, just to the point where one day I just went and got my head shaved, which this was at a time when that had a lot of negative connotations, so yeah. It was a very, it was a very edgy thing to do for somebody like me, but it was a very difficult time because not super secure, in my own identity at that point. And, my hair used to be like super, super thick. So when it starts falling out like that, it was just really, really hard for me to deal with.
So did you know what was happening when you were about 16 years old? Were you conscious about it, or was it just?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was like, I just, I dreaded, waking up in the morning sometimes, because it was like, I knew when I woke up, there was going to be another, looked like you'd shaved a dog or something on my pillow. It was to that level where sometimes, and it seemed excessive, but we never did really find out why it, fell out that much. And it was just either genetic bad luck, or, if there was something potentially medical going on at that point. But it definitely, I was very much aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Was there any solutions on the market at that time that you were aware of?
No, not really. At that point, like Rogaine and stuff like that had just started hitting the market and were just, obscenely expensive. And, at that point, financially, it just wasn't an option. And, it was just kind of like you had to deal with what you had, what you had, what you were going through.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously affected you during your teens, and you said into your 20s, your hair became more scarce than gasoline these days, right now.
Yeah. Very good analogy. Yes.
Yeah. So how would you say that it affected you throughout your 20s? From a man's like teen years into their 20s, very different set of problems or opportunities in life, the relationships that are happening.
Yeah, it completely crushed a little bit of confidence that I had, because I didn't really know any other guys that were balding at that point. And, I just immediately, in terms of like dating and stuff, most women were not interested in a, 22-year-old that is pretty much looking like, a 50-year-old, and it was just like a huge blow to a very honestly fragile ego anyway. And that's when I honestly really started struggling with, as I alluded to earlier, a lot of struggles with depression and anxiety, because I was anxious every time I went out in public. And I started gaining weight as a result of all of that, just to the point where I just kind of stopped caring about myself,
So you started gaining weight as you started to lose hair.
Yeah, pretty much. Because it was like, as this part was going away, I just didn't even feel like myself anymore. I didn't like who I was looking at in the mirror. And I just, between that and then dealing with the anxiety and everything, I just started eating more and more just to sort of find some sort of solace in the middle of all of this chaos that's going on. Because I had never, at this point, depression and anxiety, we still don't talk about it as much as we should. But at that point, that was just something guys did not talk about. Even the doctor wouldn't even really delve into it. It was more or less just sort of that dirty little secret you kind of kept, you dealt with it, but you really didn't have a full grasp of what you were dealing with,
So did losing your hair, do you feel like it started to change the way, it definitely sounds like it affected your personality. Did it affect your day-to-day life about the things that you would do or would not do?
Yeah, because I would find myself basically, aside from like going to work and stuff like that, I just kind of shut down. I just didn't want to go out in public, and especially as I started putting on weight, I didn't want to be around people. I was so miserable, and I started to really hate who I was, who I was becoming. And that was a huge struggle for somebody that didn't have the greatest confidence or self-image in the first place. It was just a very, some people have said, well, that's just vanity. No, it goes way beyond that. Yeah. You're losing a part of yourself, and it's something that, again, back then we just didn't talk about it. It was just sort of, you dealt with it.
How much weight did you gain?
At one point I got up to 350 pounds. And wow. Since 2017, I've lost over 100. I'm hoping to lose about another 50 just to, because I had gotten to the point where I couldn't walk from one room to the next without being winded. And now on a good day, I'm between walking and running, doing anywhere from 10 to 12 miles. I have really pushed myself to try to get healthier, and that's part of just the evolution of me. Because I have what they call severe persistent asthma, so my lungs, I call myself limp lungs because they don't function very well. And the running and stuff really, really helps to build up my stamina some, because there's still times that it's a struggle to breathe,
Yeah, so it sounds like you're making some amazing transitions inside of your life, at least physically. We haven't asked about your mental state, but what started to beget this weight loss for you?
Okay, well, this is the whole other part of my life that I love to tell this story. And a lot of people think that I'm absolutely goofy, but I'll tell you that there was a movie that sparked all of this change.
It was La La Land, wasn't it?
No, it was not. It was Stephen King's It Chapter 1.
Okay.
At that point, I was at my heaviest weight, and I was borderline suicidal. I'll just be 100% honest. A friend of mine basically begged me to go see the movie just to get me out of the house.
I'm not sure that's the movie I'd recommend for you to go see when you're suicidal. But hey, whatever.
I used to love horror movies a lot, and I had the old miniseries, from years ago.
Yeah.
And while I'm watching this movie, I assume that you're familiar with it since you're, talking about how it's not probably a good one. But while I'm watching this, I'm watching this group of characters band together. That one has asthma, one's overweight, one stutters. They all have these demons that they're dealing with. Most of them caused by other people, not the demonic clown. It's the real monsters are the people in their lives. And I started to realize how much I had survived and fought through on my own, and how very much, this group, the Losers Club, how they had survived all of this and banded together. And it just sparked something in me to where I realized that I am a fighter, I'm a survivor. I also am a loser with a capital L. And I actually have my license plate on my car is actually LSRS space CLB, Losers Club. I have taken it that much to heart that you can do anything. You can fight any monster in your life if you have the right people behind you, if you have the right club around you. Now, I didn't honestly have that at the time, but I've found my Losers Club since then. But that movie is what sort of, because within 2 weeks of that, I found myself starting to, I was out walking more. I got up to where I was walking like 3 miles a day. I started on like a low carb, high protein diet, lost 50 pounds right off, just real quickly. So then I'm just through this evolution of myself starting to feel alive again. And part of what I did also was I quit taking antidepressants, which I don't want to get into that because I don't want to get into the area of medical advice, but for me, they did not work. They just made me feel more shut down. And I kind of had the feeling that at least the ones that I was on were causing me some issues with the weight. So once I sort of got all that out of my system, immediately I started feeling more like I did, when I was younger, before everything started going downhill.
For sure.
So,
well, that's a very thank you for sharing that story. And the reason I asked is because people don't know this about me, but I used to be morbidly obese.
Really?
I was around 5'4" and 260 pounds. So
wow.
I was very, very overweight, and it was a serious problem during my teenage years. And I think it's very fascinating to hear the link between weight and psychology, what's going on in someone's mind versus what's going on inside their body, which to me is a great transition point to talking a little bit about, back into the hair loss element of this conversation, which is, obviously you got some hair on your head right now. So what happened there?
Okay, well, so as I was losing the weight, 2017, 2018, I started, because I'd been shaving my head since I was like 25. And I just started to wonder what I would look like with hair again. I don't know why. It was something that for whatever reason, that got planted in my brain. And I started doing consultations and just very awkward at first, but it was just something that I kind of felt like that was going to be a next step for me. And, after a couple consultations, initially I was looking at, just like hair systems. The consultation that I finally ended up going with, they put me in basically like a full cap, which was not comfortable. Was it probably more realistic looking? Yeah, but it didn't feel like me. This has been like a 4-year evolution of trying to find what feels like me, and what I like, what I feel comfortable in. And to start with, I'll be 100% honest, when I got it, basically installed and everything, I kind of freaked out. And driving home, I pulled the thing off and stopped at a barber shop and got my head shaved again because I freaked out. I was like, this doesn't look like me, So then it was just sort of like, okay, you just went through all this for nothing. So then I just kind of gradually over a couple of weeks started putting it back on and trying to get used to the new me. Because again, it's like when I'm looking in the mirror, having lost so much weight, which I'm sure you can relate to this, that it's like you don't necessarily recognize yourself anymore. And especially when you throw in hair, it can be very jarring if you're not prepared for it. And that's something that I've tried to, like when I've messaged on, like Facebook and Reddit groups, I've tried to explain that sometimes that, be prepared for, it's awesome, but it can also be very jarring, especially if you've been bald for a while, so.
Well, it looks like you've gotten used to it.
It's been a process. In the last year especially, as I mentioned, I have been very much on a spiritual path. And I mean, the church that I'm in, there were some people that sort of, got on me a lot about, the fact that it's vanity, it's, it's adornment, it's, things that, you shouldn't be doing. And, for a while, I, tried to just go back to the shaved head. I tried to put him aside for a while. I could go like 3 days, and then I started feeling incomplete again. It was like I would start to see that old 350-pound shaved head Steve looking back in the mirror. And that caused a lot of that emotional, the anxiety, all of that would start coming back in, and I would find myself not as comfortable out in public. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is good. But then I kind of also, at the beginning of this year, I did want to do sort of a spiritual check on myself in that, is it vanity? Is it attachment? Is it any of these things that are necessarily negative? So I tried to do a 40-day basically fast from wearing. And so, got my head shaved completely bald and just literally just put them away. And I made it 3 weeks, and it just finally got to the point where I was like, I go to a counselor, and like she and I talked about it, and she's basically like, as long as you're not prioritizing that over anything else, in terms of your spiritual life or anything, there's nothing wrong with it. So she said, you really don't need to even finish this 40 days because you're, she even said, you're more confident, you're more approachable, you're more Steve when you're wearing the hair than when you're bald. So that's why, the sides and stuff are so short right now, as it's very much still trying to grow back in what little bit I have left. But
so was this recently?
Yeah, this was, I just started letting it grow back out at the beginning of March. So it's still, it definitely, there's definitely not that much left there to begin with. So I don't even know at this point exactly how much I'm gonna, because I had COVID in December, and it seems like that's kind of negatively affected even how it's coming back in and everything. So,
well, there is some hair loss after COVID because your body's going through a stressful event, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is permanent. That's not medical advice, but it is scientific research that has been done. But what I'm very fascinated by, so you're obviously a very spiritual person.
Yeah,
and
very much so.
I'm curious, it sounds like you're walking out like a spiritual journey with dealing with your hair loss here, and also contending, if we will, with other people's spiritual journeys or what they think is appropriate for your spiritual journey.
Yeah. I mean, I've had very different opinions expressed to me from, people either, in my church or not necessarily in the church, but also very spiritual people, and there's one camp that is very much, if this makes you feel better about yourself, if it makes you more approachable, if it makes you more confident, you're going to be more confident and open when you're dealing with other people. If you're trying to share your testimony with somebody, or, just trying to reach out to people, you have to be you, and you have to be comfortable with yourself. And if you're, not able to do that, then not having the hair is sort of a detriment. But then there's the other camp that's like, again, that it's, it's idolatry, it's vanity, it's all of these things that, maybe for some people it is. But, I've also found out that, like in this particular church, a lot of the ladies will wear hair extensions and stuff. It's an apostolic church. So it's, there are very rigid rules on, how you should appear.
Yeah.
And so
is there a single luxury car in the parking lot on Sunday at your apostolistic?
Oh, absolutely.
But that's definitely not vanity or idolatry.
Right. And I mean, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because some of them will probably be watching this. But
it's okay. I mean, you don't have to say it. I'll say it as someone from a former extremely devout and almost Old Testament Christian religion. Y'all might want to consider.
Well,
reconsider
no,
what you're
honestly,
saying
I
to
think,
Steve, but yeah.
like I've told, I'm upfront with people. I'm like, hey, because I mean, one day one Sunday I walked in and my head was shaved, and the next Sunday I walk in and I've got the hair back on. I'm like, if you didn't know, now you know. I
Sure.
wear hair, and they're like, dude, it's fine. I mean, lots of people up here do. And I mean, to me, that was such a huge relief, because I don't care if people know. I never did, because, I've always tried to be upfront and honest with people. And that's something like, when COVID first started, like I had started a new job a couple years before COVID. And at that point I was wearing hair. Now, did I talk about it? No. But if anybody asked me, I, made it clear. Well, over the course of a couple years, I ended up with like a lot more new Facebook friends and so forth. And, so that social network was growing a little bit. And finally, at one point, I was like, you've never really just come out and put it out there. So I made this post where I just explained it, hey, if you didn't know, and I posted pictures with the hair and without. It's like, I wear hair. I call them hair hats. I don't call, this was my nickname for them, because to me, in a way, it's no different than, wearing a hat. It's not like, because I mean, like, I know a lot of guys will like install, keep theirs on for like weeks at a time. I take mine off at night, because I go to the gym and I'm running for like 7-8 miles. I'm going to sweat. So I don't want to mess with, washing the hair again in the morning. I take it off, put it on this little, stand, and I go to the gym. And, especially like right now when there's not that much to try to blend it in with, that works pretty well for me. It works with my lifestyle right now. But yeah, going back to the whole spiritual part of it, that's where I finally netted out that it was okay, was that, if I really do want to try to reach out to other people and try to help other people feel better about themselves, I got to be me. And the me right now feels better with the hair, is more complete with the hair.
Well, I love that. That's really important. It sounds like you're going through this transition of, and of course I'll take into consideration, you're in a spiritual community and you're asking for guidance and consultation there, but it sounds like you're journeying from what's right for someone else's spiritual journey and their own journey to what's right for my spiritual journey, what's right for me as an individual, what helps me show up the best possible way in my life and in my community. And I think that's an amazing thing. So let's transition into that. So you've obviously decided that this is the right choice for you, that you like this version of Steve better. It's helping you be more social, more open. Why don't you kind of walk us through what is life after getting a hair system like for you? What are the changes that you see?
Again, I find that, like, when I'm out in public, people tend to interact with me more. They'll talk to me, where it's hard to talk to somebody when you're walking around with your head down, which is what I used to do. And that's what I did when, I was walking around with the shaved head, at the beginning of the year. I just would not make eye contact with people. And so that in and of itself has opened up, on a daily basis, these great little conversations with people that I would have totally missed out on. But, especially like when I'm in church, and especially like when I've been visiting new churches, it's been in a way crucial, because I am more relaxed. I'm more, so when I'm talking to people before or after service, I'm not so self-conscious about, the fact that I'm standing there feeling incomplete. I'm just Steve. I'm, a visitor at their church, and I'm, telling them, a little bit about my, past and, why I'm there and everything. And I find that I'm actually just able to talk more, I guess, I don't want to say the word eloquently, but I'm just able to even communicate a little bit better, I think, because I'm not so much, I'm always subconsciously thinking about the fact that there's nothing up here, if that makes sense. It's like, because it's a very different feeling when you're walking around with it, that your head's shaved compared to, when you got the hair. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just given me a different sense of self, and in a good way. Not, it's not like I'm walking around thinking, oh, I look great or whatever. It's just, I feel like Steve. Who,
Did you not feel like Steve before?
When that's the interesting thing is like, I think that's the struggle that I've had when I've tried to go back to the shaved head is, again, I go back to that point in my life where I was trapped in that 350-pound body. I hated myself, honestly. And I just didn't even feel like anybody. I didn't feel like I had a personality. I didn't interact with people. At that time, I was working a job that was, I just won't even go there, but I was literally, my job was my life. Which also led or contributed to some of the weight gain, but it was a very toxic environment. And I mean, we were working 7 days a week. And I mean, you were lucky to get a few hours to sleep. And, I was just getting out of that job, around the end of 2017. So it's like it's like all of this stuff sort of started happening in the sequence that it needed to happen, to where I am now, which is a year ago, I would not be doing this. I still wouldn't have had the confidence. But now, I'm ready for that next step to where I'm going to try to put myself out there to try to help people, whether it's, with the hair systems or more ideally with their faith. If they're feeling lost like I did, I want to be able to help them find themselves and their path. And, if a hair system helps them do that, awesome. That's where I'm at this point in my personal and spiritual journey, is just wanting to help people in the ways that I kind of had to help myself because I didn't have a lot of friends. This was where I just kind of had to push myself along, and I don't want other people to have to do that. I want to be able to extend that hand and go, hey, I've been through this. I've walked this walk. Let me give you a hand with this.
I love it. That's amazing. That's incredible, and that's what it's all about is giving back to community after we found something that's helped us. So thank you for doing that work and for feeling that passion and feeling like you need to execute on it. So once again, thank you for that. You've made this transition. Has there been anything that's difficult about it for you, whether it's in the very practical, like maintaining it, or the psychological component?
Not really in terms of maintenance. I mean, it's like I said, for the most part, I just, take care of them like, you're supposed to. But I think the fact that I do take mine off at night in ways makes it a lot easier to maintain than, I know if like you're sleeping in them and, everything else, I can go, 3 or 4 days sometimes without having to wash it and, everything else. And that's also helped, extend the life span of them. And like right now I kind of have gone through weird little phases where, like when I had the completely shaved head, I like took one and just cut it into this really like extreme little like military cut kind of thing. And of course people around here loved it because it's a very small town, but it kind of, my counselor kind of said that she said it in a way it lets me sort of experience or go through some of the rebellious teenage years that I couldn't do when, I was a teenager because my hair was falling out. But it has in a way sort of let me kind of figure out how I think that, I look best. And I mean, like I've experimented with like darker systems, and kind of by accident, this last one that I got turned out to be lighter, and I actually really like it. It just sort of, I don't know, it's sort of, again, it's one of those different facets of my personality that I kind of enjoy just, changing it up a little bit. And in terms of negatives, I mean, I think it's like, I think if we're honest, they're never 100% comfortable, especially if you're, outside and you're sweating and you're trying to exercise and stuff. They, aren't always the most comfortable things in the world, but I will take that little bit of discomfort for the confidence that it gives me. It counterbalances it,
Absolutely. Was there any advice or anything that you would want to tell people who are just getting started on this journey and they're watching and they're resonating with your story?
I think the main thing would just be don't listen to other people. Do what's going to make you feel good, because you're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have critics. At the end of the day, be true to yourself. If you find something that gives you more confidence, go for it, because life is too short. And this is what I keep saying in I make these little vlogs on Facebook sometimes, and usually it's about my faith, but I always go back to, just be you. Be who God made you to be, because there's only one of you. And if you try to be what everybody else expects you to be or wants you to be, you're not going to be true to yourself. And then you're not going to reach that person that you need to reach. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, is be true to yourself.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Stephen. I appreciate you sharing your story, wide ranging from weight loss to faith to hair systems. I'm a
complex person.
Yeah, me too. So my girlfriend says so all the time. I forgot to ask though. So what is the type of hair system that you're wearing? Is it a lace? Is it a poly?
It's a lace front, poly on the sides and back. I did just order one that's a full lace, which I've never had before. But going into summer, I wanted to try that because the poly sometimes just gets kind of gross during the summer when you've got the adhesive and everything. So I want to try that and just see how it goes, see if it breathes a little bit better, because this one in particular, it's basically just lace like right in the very front part of it. So it gets really, really hot sometimes.
Sure.
Because there's so much poly and it's pretty thick. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't buy super expensive ones just because, it's like I said, I've kind of had this on and off relationship with them, but it's only been since I kind of went through this, process at the beginning of the year where I was like, no, this is A, it's okay, and B, this is who you are. So go with it,
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on. And
hey, I was glad to be here. I appreciate it. 100%.
Absolutely. I hope that you continue to share your story online for people of all different types that need to hear your story. And thank you so much to everybody that has been watching through this entire thing. I appreciate you. And if you ever have any questions or you want to share your story as well, please reach out. We'll see you soon.